guys, welcome back to Love Adventures and Art. We are at Goldfield for their Halloween event, and it is the Goldfield, or the dark side of Goldfield. So we'll see how this event is, and I did get permission to record. Welcome to Love Adventures and Art, where we like to have fun, have adventures, and be creative.
My name is Matt, and tonight, I am your guide. How many of you have been to Goldfield before? Welcome back. And those of you, quite a few of you, who seem to have never been, welcome too. And if you've never been, I do want you to know that Goldfield was an active and very rich gold mining town all throughout the 1890s. And now, every single day, people return here to watch the past come back to life before their very eyes. But at night, the town is known to change, for lack of a better word, into something else entirely. I've even heard some people try and describe it as something of a facade, almost as if when the sun goes down, Goldfield suddenly decides to put on a mask, almost as if trying to hide its truer identity. But I would disagree. I think when the sun goes down, Goldfield instead removes its mask and reveals its truer identity. And I think every single one of you have come here tonight in hopes to get a glimpse of the face that would be beneath that mask. The irony being, you have to look into the dark in order to see it. Now, truth be told, you could travel all over the West and find towns like Goldfield, mining towns and ghost towns, brimming with history. Most of them will even boast about being haunted, usually by one very famously named spirit, perhaps a famous gunfighter, or somebody who was a victim of a bloody stagecoach robbery or something of that nature. But in Goldfield, it is completely different. You will not hear us boasting about any one famously named spirit, and that is because in Goldfield, we have too many spirits to count. And a lot of people, they ask me, why? Why is Goldfield so different? And the answer is a lot more simple than many might think. It is because of that mountain. There is a 5,000-foot monolith that resides just over there across the way into the darkness, and it is actually said to be cursed. But not just the mountain. The entire 160,000 acres of untamed desert that surrounds us now as we speak, because for centuries people have been killing each other for what's underneath that mountain, spilling blood all across this desert floor for what's inside that mountain. And the curse that I speak of goes a little something like this. Anyone who dies within 160,000 acres of that mountain's shadow is then forced to dwell there forever. And it just so happens Goldfield is on that 160,000 360,000 acres. And to most people, that's gonna sound like something right out of fiction. But you see, some of us, we call Goldfield home. And we've seen a lot of souls come and go, so to speak. Even at this very train station, we all once knew a man that used to work here who admittedly had a very strange sense of humor, and he used to do things all the time that he thought were absolutely hilarious, and it really didn't matter at all if anyone agreed with him or not. And one thing he used to do over and over and over was go into this shop at night and begin to rearrange things so that when they came in the morning, they had a devil of a time trying to find all the strange new places he had located items. And to him, it was hilarious, even though nobody else was laughing. But then one day, that very man looked right at me. And he told me, when he dies, he swears he will haunt Goldfield. But it just so happens that man passed away 3 years ago. But that has never once stopped the pranks from happening. More often than you'd think. They'll still go into that shop in the morning and still find things rearranged. Just as if he's still doing it. And still, nobody's laughing. In fact, his ashes are in an urn just above that door. You need a ladder in order to obtain those ashes, but that doesn't seem to keep the urn from facing in different directions all throughout the week. There's another man that works here presently. He used to climb up there and fix the urn facing forward every chance he got. Until recently telling me, finally had to stop because it was happening so frequently. So who knows? Maybe there is something to the curse that I speak of. But for now, if you'd all be so kind as to join me over here. Now I hope you're not all exhausted after that long walk we just took from there. But it is very necessary to bring you here first, where the past weds the present. Because in the mid-1980s, a man by the name of Bob Shoosh bought the rights to the town of Goldfield. 1880s, a man by the name of Hakes was in these parts hunting when one day he went to collect a kill and he noticed the rocks around the kill were shiny. And as he further investigated, he soon discovered a small trench that was filled with gold. He contacted experts he knew, both from Arizona and as far as Colorado, and together they turned that trench into a vein. And that vein would soon become the mouth of the Mammoth Mine, just 100 yards north of the church at the top of our town. And it was from the Mammoth Mine that they pulled the richest golden ore that the state of Arizona had ever seen before. And soon there were 17 more mine shafts that emerged all throughout these hills, and every single one of them were rich. And it was from that the town of Goldfield originally grew. And you should have seen it. 3 times the size that it is now. There were schools here because there were families here, and there were banks, and there were post office, and there were doctors, and there were even 3 saloons. So imagine for a moment being 4 hours away from the next nearest town, but you could still go bar hopping. A few drinkers in the crowd, I see. Goldfield was the place to be. But unfortunately, that dream was not meant to last, because in October of 1897, while 1,058 feet beneath the ground, the men in this town struck an aquifer, and this aquifer sent a river rushing down the mine shaft, filling everything up into a water table so high. It's still there to this day. So just under your feet is Arizona's largest lake. It just happens to be underground because Arizona has always had a pretty sick sense of humor when it comes to water. But it was enough to kill the entire town of Goldfield. Separating the men from all that gold, they had no choice but to pack everything up and just leave, thus turning the town into the ghost town that it is more known as today, where an entire century later, the owner, Bob Shute, would begin to breathe life into it once again, bringing countless construction workers out here to help him do so. And one day, he himself was among them, digging to place a line of telephone poles when suddenly the machine he was using to do so died. Bob would spend hours trying to get the machine to work again, and this was happening on top of many other issues with construction all throughout the town. It was only day one, and they were saying maybe the ground here no longer wants to be disturbed. But Bob Shute is not the kind of man to let little things like this stop him. So after much effort, he finally began to break a fair amount of ground when he noticed the man alongside him by the name of Salvador began to motion to him something like this. And Bob thought he was trying to say, dig deeper. So he did, until he realized Salvador was screaming. And when Bob ran to see what the matter was, Salvador told him, protruding from the dirt, he could see a human femur bone. And then that day, Bob and Salvador uncovered over 90% of a man's remains. They called the authorities. It made headlines. The story was so big, it garnered the attention of the University of Arizona, who then wanted to claim the body for what they said to be forensic purposes. Bob kindly obliged, only to discover they were not being honest at all in their claim. They tried to keep that corpse permanently for themselves, starting a year-long war between the town of Goldfield and the University of Arizona. But during that year, the paranormal activity in this town skyrocketed to the point that the men who were working on it became afraid of it. And the things they would speak of seeing and the things they would speak of hearing were right out of a horror story. But again, Bob Shute is just not the kind of man to let little things like this stop him. So for better or for worse, they continued to reconstruct anything in the town that needed to be reconstructed. And I'm happy to say, at the end of that year, we won the case against the University of Arizona and got back what was always rightfully ours to begin with. And then we reburied the man just where I'm standing now. And today, he is known as the Unknown Prospector. The Unknown Prospector was given a funeral, and it was the biggest send-off anyone in Goldfield had ever witnessed before, which makes for a happy ending to a long story. But I also think Bob Shute was hoping to close the lid, so to speak, on the paranormal activity in this town. But unfortunately for him, yet rather fortunately for us, it didn't work. And now if you'd all be so kind as to once again follow me. Then I welcome her to take the rest of the tour with us. Because I think if Sarah wants to make her presence known, she will. I don't even think it would be the first time, because being the nature of the kind of tour this is, a lot of our guests will snap pictures of dark corners and the things that have begun to appear in the photos of those dark corners ever since I began to give the invitation to Sarah. Oh, they have increased dramatically. So for the rest of the tour, I hope you will follow not just me, but us. What's your point, partner?
see a shadow in that area.
This is my very first time ever saying this out loud. However, I often stand here for the tour. Things change a little, stories change a little, but I'll always stand by this door at some point on this tour. There was a man 2 nights ago, 3 nights ago. He was taking pictures of me. Right about the point that I spoke about Leonard, he snapped a picture of me from somewhere in the back over there. At the end of the tour, he showed me that picture. You zoom in on me, standing about here. It's not my face. There's a longer beard, and my eyes are black. And he works in the town, so he'll be editing the photo a little bit, touching it up, sending it to me, and I'm gonna look at it more for myself. Now, I don't know what Leonard looks like, but he's my #1 suspect so far. But if anyone else in the crowd tonight is taking pictures of me at this point, look closely at him, because I looked at it. It wasn't my face. I don't know how to feel about that. But follow us. We're going down. We're still alive. I hesitated to say that for a moment, I'm sorry. But now comes one of the, if not the hardest part of the tour. I need to slither my way to that side. Yep. But don't worry, I'm a professional. Just watch your toes. Thank you. Now, is that a Disneyland sweater? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Haunted Mansion was a huge inspiration to me. You can probably tell.
Yes.
I wear it on my sleeve whether I want to or not.
My favorite ride.
Oh, it's the greatest thing ever. Now, same gap on this side. Please, once again, watch your step.
It's a long way down.
Very careful. The laughing wall seems like a logical place to stop. Yep. All right, go ahead and line up against the walls to create a pathway down the middle for me. Doesn't matter which side you're on. And I'm going to venture back to the surface to get the others. In the meantime, you're trapped down here with me. Sorry. Here will claim to be sensitive to the paranormal. Tonight's a bit off, though. The young lady in the front says she's sensitive, but she didn't really feel anything, as did the woman in the back. The gentleman next to me, now I never asked you, are you sensitive to the paranormal that you know of?
I can sense if there's something there, yeah, but I can't like see or talk or anything.
Anything like that.
I
Sometimes that's all it takes.
Feel.
Yeah, and with Danny, that seems to be all it is. Now, he's sort of feeling sort of a eerie sort of feeling that he, and a shortness of breath that he did not feel before coming down here. Is it exactly the same now? Is it any different since Danny went back over there?
It's less, but
still kind of there.
Yeah.
It's actually more uneasy now that you put it back.
Really? Your
Now
name is
it's-
Danny, yeah?
Now it's starting to get a little...
Yeah.
And he is a sensitive.
Yeah, you are? Now here's the thing.
Sometimes it shuts off. Sometimes it turns on.
That's
Well,
the way I am, too.
yeah.
That's the way I am.
And are you feeling anything?
No. I'm
It's
not.
so strange. Now, I'll say, because honestly, I said this in the back, most of the time, Danny seems to pick on women. Tonight, it's sort of the opposite. That's it. We'll say, some of the most frightening things I've ever seen on this tour, they happen right here in the presence of Danny. Now, as I said, you hold up a coat like that, you give it a name. A lot of people will just sort of greet you with smiles and laughter. But if they knew what I knew about Danny, they would not only not be laughing, they'd be wondering why I dare even touch that coat. We've seen people begin to cry. We've seen people begin to scream. We've seen people grab others and throw them toward Danny to keep the two of them separated. I've even seen people fall to the ground claiming to have been struck by Danny. But what's frightening about that most, all these things have happened before I even mention who he is, or if anyone is sensitive or not. So Danny, the reason I always hang him back up the moment I find out anyone might feel a thing. We don't know all he's capable of. But many who come down here who claim to be able to contact the other side are terrified of that hanging coat, telling us that whatever dwells inside of it is more than a ghost, something far worse, and that he can also leave the coat, which makes me interested, which is interesting that some of you are feeling it now that he's gone. It's almost like he's like, wait a minute, came back to pay Danny a visit. Danny came to pay Danny a visit, maybe. How are you feeling right now?
A stiffness in my neck, but that's it right now.
Yeah. You seem...
I'm tearing up.
Why? Are you okay? You good? I noticed
He
that.
does that when he can sense
I
it.
thought it was a trick of the light, but it really is. Not.
And then his arm hair will stand up.
And you're...
I don't know if anybody can see, but
Oh, I can.
there's
Oh yeah.
my face. I'm like legitimately tearing up. Like eyes watering uncontrollably, and I don't know if my hair's not right now. My arms are, but
Interesting. Yeah.
and I've taken this mind tour
Oh, the daytime
before,
light tour.
and I've never felt uncomfortable down here. I feel very uneasy right
This thing,
now.
Danny comes and goes, yeah. Mike refers to it as him sleeping, but now, the fact that you also are feeling something makes me think Danny's maybe just picking on the fellas tonight. Now, as we continue, if it worsens, yeah, let me know. And in the back, if you suddenly hear an extra set of footsteps in the dirt behind you, you have my permission to run. I won't even judge you. Follow me. Those of you who've seen the Ghost Adventures remember them featuring that very profoundly. Now, if you don't know what the Bordello is, it's the old Goldfield brothel. The old Goldfield brothel may be the single most haunted building that I personally have ever stepped foot in. So let's go inside of it.
Kinda a house. Kind of.
First time in the Bordello.
Room, sometimes even aggressive, like pushed around, scratches aggressive, so be wary. That's a real warning. Welcome to the Bordello. A lot of times when guests enter the Bordello, they will immediately begin to tell us about how in here it just feels so much different than the rest of the town. Darker and heavier, and some have even gone as far as to use the word oppressive. Makes sense because in its day, this would have been a dark and heavy and sometimes even oppressive place. For in an old mining town, most of the men, of course, are gonna die beneath the ground. But most of the women, they would die by their own hand. Because unfortunately, conditions are rather harsh for the poor women in a town like Goldfield. And in the town of Goldfield, these poor women were outnumbered 80 to 1. And a lot was expected of them. But imagine for a moment feeling the need to escape your life to the point you are willing to try and take it from yourself, only to discover just after you're stuck here forever. Your attempt to escape this place failed you miserably. It might explain why the entities that are often felt within this room alone are extremely agitated, to say the very least. Just like the rest of the town, there are countless ghost stories to be told just between the walls that surround us now. But in the bordello, everything seems to be either angrier, more aggressive, or sadly, in great despair. A lot of times people in here become overwhelmed with emotions that they can't explain. We've even seen what we think may have been mild possession while in here. Some of the most frightening things I've witnessed, not just on the tour, but in my entire life, happened in this room. Kind of like the air conditioner kicking on. Times I sleep, I'm not gonna lie. But one night, I was standing exactly where I am standing now. Michael was present, standing sort of where you were sitting, kind of right in front of the couch in the center there. There were 3 others behind that bar, and there was one other woman standing where my lantern is burning, by the name of Bethany. I'll admit, I was just kidding around when I pointed to Bethany, and this strange music began to play. I pointed to Bethany, and kidding around, like I said, I simply said, if anything's here that wants to make its presence known, say the name of the woman that I am pointing to. Well, of course, all of us expecting absolutely nothing. Every one of us heard. All throughout this room, seemingly out of thin air. The 3 behind that bar,
like a music box,
ran to that door. But me being the gentleman that I am, I stopped him because I was refusing to believe I heard what it sounded like I heard. And I actually talked the 3 of them into going right back behind that bar. Though I noticed they were huddled a little closer this time. I returned to where I was, Michael to where he was, and Bethany to where she was. I pointed at Bethany again. But this time, I said, for the sake of skepticism, if there is something here that truly, unmistakably wants to make its presence known, you say the name of this woman a 2nd time, and I promise I won't ask a 3rd time. And then, in the darkness of that room over there, Bethany! It was so incredibly aggressive that 2nd time. It caused all of us to step away in utter shock and fear. And the 3 behind the bar, again, ran to that door. But this time, I let them go. You could hear all 3 of them screaming as they ran down that spiral staircase and all the way down the street. Now, I was still in shock for a moment. I looked over at Michael. We were just astounded by whatever it was that just happened. But him and I, we decided to search this place frantically for anything that could have proven that to be a hoax. Any kind of phone, recording devices, audio devices of any kind. And admittedly, we found nothing. But then, to our absolute disbelief, we looked over and it dawned on us. Bethany hadn't run out. She was still here. Only Bethany was no longer standing. She had collapsed to the floor, and Michael and I ran over and helped lift her up, and as we did, her head rolled back and we saw upon her face the most unmistakable look of fear we had ever seen on anyone's face before. And she had tears now running down her white cheeks, and it looked almost as if she wasn't even breathing. But then, right before Michael and I's eyes, we witnessed 3 red nail marks appear right down her chest. And we immediately grabbed her by the arms and began racing her to that door. All the while doing so, 3 more red nail marks appeared down her back. We were terrified, but we got her out of the building. And she's okay. But she's never felt the same. Entering place that we're standing in right now. True. Scary stories. Means more than I know how to express from the bottom of my spooky little heart. Now, a lot of people will ask me, if these stories are true, why do you do it? Why do you go about the town and relive such horrifying experiences, so to speak? Well, aside from the fact that we are completely crazy, is also the fact that we fancy ourselves as something of paranormal investigators. You might have noticed tonight's tour is presented by something called Fear Frontier. Well, Michael, Leanne, and I, we are Fear Frontier. Sort of a ghost adventurers of Arizona. If you would, we investigate things, and much of what we investigate, we document. And much of what we document, we will soon be posting to the likes of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram.
Thank you so much for watching, loves.
We had an interesting time. We had some experiences.
It was definitely a fun adventure.
Thanks for coming along with us on this spooky adventure. Make sure to hit that like button, and if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe and check out our other videos.